Wheel of Time fans, welcome back to Dan of the Red Hand. I am Dan, and today we're going to do that non-spoiler review of Amazon's Wheel of Time series, Season 1, Episode 7, The Dark Along the Ways. Before I do, be sure to click that like, subscribe, and bell icon so you're notified whenever I come out with new content. And as a reminder, this is a no-spoiler review, so I'm not going to go into anything from the books. I don't consider spoiling an episode that you're watching as part of the spoilers, but I will say that I did include some of the X-ray bonus content in this breakdown. So I'm not spoiling anything from the books. Everything I get is from there. So without further ado, let's get going with that cold opening, which is the Battle of the Shining Walls, or the Blood Snows. Again, that is part of that X-ray content. You get to see an Aiel woman. That's who that is. This is a war between the Aiel and the Kyrianan, really, after 400 years of truce. That being said, these men that she's fighting are not Kyrianan. They're actually Illianer. You can tell by their yellow and green colors, as well as the golden bees that are on their chest plate. So it's not just the Kyrianan that are fighting, there's, Illianers there as well. Nonetheless, this battle raged on for about 2 years, this war raged on for about 2 years before the king of Kyrian was finally killed by the Aiel for his sins against them, which they are pretty vague about and don't tell you what it is. I'm assuming it's going to come out in a later season. Nonetheless, I think we can all agree that this woman would have wrecked these Illianer soldiers if it wasn't for the fact that she is pregnant and going through actual labor pains. She does, that does lead to her not killing one guy immediately, having to bite his hand, and he stabs her in the side. Nonetheless, she eventually kills him all, sits down to give labor, and we see a sword point at her face. Now, this sword is different than the other ones. This one looks more katana-like, and we've seen it before. It has that heron mark on it. This is Tamal Thor. We find out later on that during this scene, Tamal Thor does not kill her and actually holds her hand while she goes through labor, and as she dies, picks up her child. We'll get into more of that later. Do want to point out a few things here. Tam is originally from the Two Rivers. However, in the X-ray content, it does explain that he did go to Ilion for this war. He did become the second captain of the Companions, which is a military faction associated with Ilion. And that heron is an indicator that he attained, the prowess in the sword that made him be called a blade master. So that is the mark of a blade master, that heron on his sword. Then after the title credits, we get back to our main party, and they are in the ways, and they're immediately saying, hey, Moraine, rechannel this thing open so that we can get Matt out. But Loyal breaks in and says, no, that's impossible. We can't channel in here. It'll bring Machin Shin, and he will devour your soul. We'll get more into Machin Shin later. Nonetheless, that gives them the reason not to immediately try to open that back up, and they have to go forward. As they are, I got to say, I really like the look of the waves here. It's dark, it's foreboding. There's those flashes of lightning, which is okay. But I think the key thing here is that they made it look like these are basalt columns, which, does have a geometric, almost man-made feel to them, but they are a natural formation. So I really like the choice that they did there. As they're walking, Moraine and Lan are having a discussion. He's like, well, what if Matt's the Dragon Reborn? She's like, then it's even better that he's not here because he's got a darkness within him. That's how the dagger was able to feed off him and him off it. I wouldn't let him within 100 leagues of the Dark One because of that, because I'm not going to allow the Dragon Reborn to turn to shadow, showing just how dedicated she is to this mission. Additionally, as they're traveling, Loyal starts to give some exposition of the way, saying that they were once lush, vibrant, had fruit and other edible vegetation everywhere, and were bright. And now it's dark, pockmarked stones with Machin Shin. Now, just a quick hint on the ways. These were created back in the Age of Legends, and they connected Ogier Steadings. There were guide stones that they would be able to connect. So, basically you can travel a day in the ways and travel the extent of the continent. So very interesting stuff there that we'll probably need to know. Again, check out that X-ray content that they have on Amazon Prime. They keep going, and they eventually come across another guiding stone, a guide stone. But this one is broken, almost as if somebody is trying to not allow you to figure out which way to go. Loyal says, yeah, I can still read it, but I'm going to need your patience, which means it's going to take a very long time. So during that, Egwene and Rand kind of snuggle up together. You can see that Perrin kind of sees it and looks off to the side. And while he's doing that, Nynaeve is watching him. So this is kind of like that setup for that later argument on whether to go to the Eye of the World or not. We'll get to that in a little bit, because Egwene is woken up by a very familiar whistling. And then a Trolloc attacks and is channeled away. Now, this is a very important scene. I want to break down a few things that happen here because of that channeling. So first of all, Loyal's like, oh my goodness, that should be impossible. Trollocs should not be in the ways at all. So that's like, oh wow, really that's happening. And Lan's like, well, that would explain how they got to the Two Rivers undetected. You're kind of saying, hey, there's probably a way gate near there, maybe in Manetherin. And Moraine is also like, yeah, and what happened to the guiding stone? You know, because it does look like those are some big chop marks, maybe from a Trolloc axe we've seen earlier. And then Perrin says, did anyone else just feel it get a lot colder? Very interesting there, because that means Machin Shin is coming. You can see it on Loyal's face. He's like, oh shit, it's about to happen. And we do get to see Machin Shin coming. They hurry. They divert from the waygate that is at the Eye of the World to one at Faldara, which is closer in the ways, but is going to be farther away from the Eye of the World. So not going to show up exactly at their destination. They're going to show up a little bit farther away, but it means they can escape Machin Shin potentially. While Machin Shin is there, you know, Moraine is like, hey, whatever it says, don't listen. And then you get to hear the kind of things that Machin Shin's saying. And it's just trying to plant every seed of doubt and despair into these people. You know, Moraine, you're wrong. You're going to lead these kids to their death, and you're going to think that it's just, but it's not. You know, Gwen will never love you as much as she loves, you know, or as much as you love her. You know, all these things to sow doubt, but the key is he also doing it to Nynaeve. You know, you'll hear them scream. You'll hear them scream as they die, just like you do with your parents. You can't protect them. And eventually, she channels a big protective bubble. Now, interesting to note that, again, it's just kind of an explosion from her. It just kind of happens. You don't see her doing any crazy hand motions or these slow strands of the one power come up. It just happens, which is very interesting. Moraine noticed it, and she is, again, doing that same triquetra pattern that she did to open the waygate again. And they do eventually escape. Luckily enough, all of them, because Lan does go back and save Nynaeve. In this scene, we also do get to see, as they're leaving, lightning flash, and you see Padan Fain. Kind of knew it was him with that whistle, so he's there, and we actually do see him leave the waygate later, as well as that is Padan Fain that Perrin sees in Faldara. So as they exit the waves, you do see that they are all red-eyed. They have been through emotional trauma. Even Rand actually cries a little bit, and Rand's like, hey, whatever Machin Shin told you, just put it out of your mind. Let's just go to Faldara. We know people there. We'll find safety for the night, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do. And we get to see Faldara. Now, again, X-ray content. Faldara is a fortress city in the northern part of Shinar, and it is separated from the Blight and all the Trollocs by this mountain range that has a gap, specifically called Tarwin's Gap. That gap creates a natural bottleneck for any Trolloc hordes that are trying to come south, which is why that small army is able to hold them at bay. Because even though the Trollocs probably have superior numbers, they can only fight a few at a time because of that bottleneck. So in here we get to meet Lord Algamar, Jagad, the Lord of Faldara, as well as his sister Amelisa. But we also get to see Uno, one of my favorite characters, and he's a bloody great bastard. So I'm really happy to see him. I can't wait to see more of him later on. But there's this conversation, and you know, immediately Lord Algamar already thinks why she's there. Like, no, my sisters, we got this. We've been protecting the world from the Trollocs for 1,000 years. We got it. Moraine's like, I'm not here to advise you, but Trollocs are using the ways now, so you may want to wall that one up. And he's like, oh shit, yeah, get on that. Go wall that up. Unfortunately, Padan Fain's already come through, as we know. Then we cut to a scene with Amelisa and Moraine walking together. And there's a couple very interesting things. First of all, you see Amelisa channel wall torches to light, showing that she can channel. She's pretty adept. But later on, it's revealed that, you know, while she has the Great Serpent Ring, which they actually wear on their middle finger, their left hand, not their ring, it doesn't have a stone in it. She's like, you know, yeah, you were trained with us. It's too bad that you weren't powerful enough to become a full Aes Sedai. So that kind of shows that, hey, there are women out there that have the Serpent Ring that don't have the stone, that were trained there, that, you know, have a tie-in with the Aes Sedai, but are not actually full-blown Aes Sedai, but still retain an ability to channel, although probably on a smaller scale. She also mentions, hey, does Min still live here? She's like, yes, but why do you want to go see the seer? So setting up real quick, hey, Min is a seer. She sees something, and we find out in the next scene. But before we get there, she also says, hey, you need to send a message to the White Tower to have them track down and find this man, well, a boy really named Matrim Cawthon. She's like, well, who do I send that message to? Send it to the Red Aja. Now, that's because the Red Aja are the ones who deal with men who can channel. And Moraine, at this point in time, does not know if that is Mat or not. Mat might be able to. Mat might still be the Dragon Reborn. So she is sending the Red Aja after them because she thinks that he could be dangerous and that he may need to be guided and or gentled. I don't know. Again, we already covered it, but Perrin sees Pad and Fane in the streets of Faldara as they're making their way to Min's bar. Now, while in there, Perrin also has a discussion with Rand about the Way of the Leaf and how he thinks that it would be better if the whole world just followed it, how the world would be a better place. And it's kind of interesting to see how this man who was definitely hurt by violence that he had done, kind of really wanting that to be a thing and wanting the world to be a better, more peaceful place. But Nynaeve's like, hey, what the heck is she doing and who's she talking to? And this is Moraine talking to Min. And she's like, hey, tell me what you see around these people. And Min does reluctantly. She says that, Perrin has yellow eyes and blood running down his chin. Now, we've seen the yellow eyes. We haven't seen blood running down his chin as of yet. She says that she sees Rand rocking a baby. And she's like, what baby? It looks like every other baby. It's just a baby. But interesting there, who knows what that's going to foreshadow. With foreshadowing things like this, it's never very in-your-face blunt. Then for the other two, when it comes to Egwene and Nynaeve, she doesn't say which one, but she says, I see a white flame and a golden ring. So that can mean any number of things. Very interesting to see what happens later on with that as well. She also glances across Moraine, and Moraine's like, you saw a vision of me. What was it? She tells her, I see the Amyrlin in full regalia, and she will be your downfall. So, despite having sexy times last episode, that relationship might become a little more rocky later on. So after finding all these revelations, the group is sitting around a table waiting for Moraine to land, and she comes up to explain. Now, of course, Nynaeve immediately is like, who are you talking to? She's like, someone I've known since she was a girl. She's like, stop lying to us. Well, you forget, girl, I cannot lie. Just once again, showing you the audience, this woman cannot lie. She explains that she was hoping that Min would be able to tell them which one of these youngsters is the Dragon Reborn so she could save the rest of them. But she wasn't able to, so they're all going to have to go to the Eye of the World, which is going to suck because she thinks that 3 of them are going to get ground between these two forces of nature and not make it back alive. Potentially the same being said for Moraine and Lan because they are also not the Dragon Reborn. So they're willing to give themselves up as well as all these other lives just to get the Dragon Reborn up to the Eye of the World to defeat the Dark One, to seal him back away or kill him or whatever. I don't know as of yet, but that is her goal. She's like, we're going, we leave tomorrow. And Nynaeve, in typical Nynaeve fashion, is like, it's wonderful that you made your choice, but we'll decide for ourselves because that's our right, in our opinion. She's like, fine, but do it quickly. We're leaving in the morning. Now, this does lead to a wonderful discussion between the 4 youngsters, and they're all throwing out reasons that they think the others are being reluctant or being too, gung-ho about it. But it really devolves into kind of an argument. And the key with this is, there's not a key other than what you get. But what I want to point out is that this was a wonderfully acted and scripted scene. This happens the way a real argument does. It starts with small things, and because people get their hackles up and get defensive, it just starts to escalate until somebody finally starts just saying things just to hurt somebody else, which is exactly what Rand does when Egwene's like, he left us. And she's like, Rand's like, well, guess you're the expert on that because you're the only person who ever left me. And you can tell it just cut her to the core. So that is exactly how arguments devolve and how you start to say irrational things just to hurt the other person. I really loved how well they did that particular scene. Again, after another discussion on Moraine's balcony, Lan is like, yeah, I do have people in the city that I need to see before we leave tomorrow. So he goes to this Malkiri family. Now, Nynaeve is following him, literally following him. And he does notice. So he's in there doing his greetings, and as she's like looking through the window, which isn't, as clear panes as what we have. So there's some fudgeability there. She doesn't realize that he has already snuck out around back. So when she turns around, he's right there. And it's like, hey, you can't rightly call following me tracking me, but you can come in and eat. So he brings her in there to eat. And this leads to a wonderful discussion between him and her later, because the man there, Zahir, calls her, welcomes her and calls Lan Daishan, which is something we've heard Lord Algamar, as well as another one of the soldiers in Faldara, call him. And we're just going to follow these two around for a minute because it makes it easier for the review process. So they eat dinner, and as they're walking back, having a little banter, they eventually arrive at Lan's door, and he's like, well, have a good night. That kind of ending to the sad date ending that we've all had. And he walks into his house. and Nynaeve is wondering if she should have taken the initiative. You can see it on her face. As there's a couple of times when it looks like she might have taken the initiative and tried to kiss him, but she didn't. Nonetheless, she actually sneaks in, and they, get to have some sexy time, some consensual sexy time. And afterwards, she's actually getting ready to leave early. She's completely playing the part of like every sleazy guy that you've ever seen. Like, she took the initiative, she snuck in and said, "Do you want me to leave?" She's the one who's leaving early in the morning while the other one's still asleep. So very interesting kind of flipping of roles there. Not in a bad way, just, kind of interesting. Nonetheless, they have this wonderful discussion. She's like, "Why do they call you Daishan?" And you find out that Lan is Malkiri, and Daishan is a title given to future kings of Malkir, i.e. it's basically like saying prince. And he explains that the Blight was, it was taken over by the Blight 30 years ago, and when the palace had fallen, Zahir was one of his father's armsmen and helped whisk him away from the palace and raised him in Faldara, basically kind of like as one of his own kids. I mean, he didn't truly raise him as like, "Oh, you're mine," the way that, Tam Althor did to Ram, but took that father role and let him stay at his place. So she's like, "Oh, this makes sense why you bonded Moraine. You're a king without a kingdom, a boy without a family. It's just too bad that she owns you." And he's like, "She owns me no more than those kids own you." Kind of throwing this right back at her because, Nynaeve's been very good at pointing as to why other people can't live up to what she wants. But he's like, those children own you in the same way. After all, wisdom never weds. And that kind of, you can see that gets to her core there. Like, yeah, he's right. I'm owned the same way by them. They've both taken on that role to protect someone else and not live their lives the way they may want to, but to live it in service to somebody else. So kind of a neat little scene there. We also get to see Rand and Egwene have kind of a making up, argument, and then they make up. And, during that, Rand's like, "You can't fight this power within you. You need to go to the White Tower. I'll follow you there. I wouldn't let anybody else be your warder." And they kiss, and she's like, "Yeah, just so you know, if you're the Dragon Reborn, I'll always be there for you. I'll never turn my back on you." Which leads to them getting to have sexy times, at which Rand wakes up from and starts having remembrances, flashbacks to that Trolloc attack and how he was carrying his father through the woods, and his father is speaking, "I'm sorry, Carrie, there was this baby, it was in the snow, I couldn't just leave it there." Showing that he does have that seed of doubt already, like, am I really who I think I am? Because that's not normal. That's not what a normal child's father says. So there was that aspect. Then he remembers himself channeling to break down that door to escape Dana in Brainspring. He remembers walking up and going, that mountain seems familiar. Like, I've seen it before. 2 Dragon Mount, on which the slopes he was born. He also remembers channeling in the ways to save Egwene. And then he remembers Makin Shin saying, "You deep down, you've always known it as you. You can't escape your fate. You are the Dragon Reborn." So this is like, hey, series confirmed. Rand is the Dragon Reborn, but in his head, it's not even completely confirmed to him. So he goes to see that same seer, Min. And she's like, "Oh, well, what do you want?" He's like, "Tell me I'm not the Dragon Reborn." She's like, "You're not the Dragon Reborn. Don't spare my feelings. Really let me know." And after some discussion, she tells him that her first vision that she ever had as a child, while she was living in Tar Valon, near Dragon Mount, near where that battle happened, she turned a corner and saw a man, a companion, wearing that same sword. And around him, she saw blood and snow, a baby born on the slopes of Dragon Mount, and him taking that baby to be raised around sheep in a sleepy village between 2 rivers. And that baby was something impossible. And again, this just confirms that, yeah, he like legitimately is the Dragon Reborn. And he's like, "Hey, then tell me one more thing. Do I survive the Eye of the World?" And then he says, "Well, I get it. I thought not." Well, just keep in mind, Min didn't answer one way or the other there. She didn't say yes or no. She just got up and walked away with her jug of hooch. So who knows there? Next scene we get to see is actually Egwene sitting on Nynaeve, or walking into Nynaeve's room, realizes she's not there, and then sitting on her perfectly made bed as she comes back and is looking at her going, "Hey, where have you been? Because you were not sleeping in this bed." And there's this other, little bit of banter. Perrin shows up. Long story short is they all decide, yeah, we're going to go to the Eye of the World, and then you see Rand knocking on the door. Only when they open it, it's not Rand, it's Lan, showing again that misdirect, because Rand was actually knocking on Moraine's door to tell her, "Yeah, I'm the Dragon Reborn." So Lan's like, hey, she masked my bond, which means they left, and we get to see that Rand and Moraine are already at the Blight. They start moving in on their way to the Eye of the World, and that is where the episode ends. It ends in that cliffhanger saying that, hey, there's going to be some big things happen in the next one, and I'm very excited to see it. So, in the comments, let me know, what do you think is going to happen next? Are the other group going to also follow them into the Blight and go to the Eye of the World? Are they going to catch up? Or is anybody going to die? You know, I'm really excited. We have one more episode left, so let's just keep this thing going. And until next time, I'm Dan, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.